Good morning. We are back to another leadership edge and roundtable discussion with a very hot topic and very important topic that we'd love to address, which is art of collaboration and communication and everything that we need to do in order to work very well effectively as a team. And for everybody that is not familiar with Leadership Edge is all about and why it's so important and what that stands for, I want to make sure that everybody watching and listening for first time are also asking us questions, join us, and having a dialogue, because we obviously are looking how can we raise the bar in time and chaos, uncertainty, challenges, and things that have really sometimes put us all on the edge. And it's not the kind of edge, right, LRA? We have here in studio your hosts. I'm thrilled to be here with Lorraine. She is back from vacation. Even though she's sick, she's here with us. And Lorraine is someone not only who is renowned thought leader and known in her sphere of influence. She's also a former FBI agent that worked very closely nationally and internationally, former spy, and also very well-known published author. And she has phenomenal framework here that is perfect for us to discuss. So Lorraine, first of all, good morning. How are you?
I am doing well, and I do apologize. I'm a little congested, but I'm feeling so much better than I was a couple of days ago. So I'm thankful for that.
That's fantastic. And again, thank you for your commitment. Thank you for showing up and being here with us. And also want to just to quickly highlight how important it is for me also looking for someone who is looking for lens on global scale and everything all the way back to zoom in our own cities and environments that we're in, importance of understanding the art of the synergy, art of collaboration, and also art of understanding the differences when we interact with each other. So to kick off this, obviously, we have very clear sense of when we collaborate very well versus where we cooperate, right? And a lot of times people don't really understand that distinction. Do you mind sharing your perspective, Lorraine, how that looks like and what that means also to obtain it and from team synergy perspective?
Well, absolutely. And there is a big difference between cooperation and collaboration, although they are related. And I'll just give you an example from my own background. Not many people are thrilled to get a phone call from the FBI. Fewer yet are excited to learn that they've landed themselves in the middle of an investigation. And then still fewer yet when they're told that an imminent visit by an FBI agent would happen soon to discuss that same investigation. So, even good, honest people really hesitated to, we're anxious when I showed up on their doorstep with my FBI badge in hand. And this is where it could get tricky because I really needed their cooperation. They had information I needed about the subject of my investigation. And as maybe some of you know, I was an FBI counterintelligence and espionage agent. And the people I contacted knew the foreign spy through either social or business activities. There was some contact they'd had with the spy. So my first step was always to enlist their cooperation. The next step was collaboration. So the goal was to move from gathering information about this individual to a more collaborative effort where we would work as a team to determine whether the FBI could recruit this spy to work for the US government. And so, while the chances of you crossing paths with a foreign spy are minimal, you will encounter bosses or clients or even family members from whom you need to elicit cooperation and hopefully collaboration on some issue that's going on that is important to both of you. And as Isabella mentioned, collaboration is just such a hot topic right now because business is becoming increasingly global and cross-functional. Silos are breaking down and connectivity is increasing. Teamwork is seen as, the key to organizational success. I was reading something in the Harvard Business Review, and they estimate that the time spent by managers and employees in collaborative activities has ballooned by 50% over the past 20 years. So it's becoming something that everybody is dealing with and embracing in a very good way.
That is fantastic. And I just wanted to also acknowledge how beautiful it is to have a woman supporting other women and being here and listening and also contributing to this hot topic. Liga, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to see you. And I hope you are staying warm in Canada, wherever you are.
Yes.
Dr. Pauline, great to see you. Good morning. I'm glad that this topic is also a hot topic of your study and interest. We look forward to your comments and also perspective, as well as questions.
Yes.
And
We love questions.
And it's also so important, obviously, specifically as we're going through a lot of changes and shifts that is happening, to really stay focused on what really matters, right? And how important it is, as you just mentioned, Lorraine, looking from thought leadership experiences for me in corporate and arena, and also thinking, seeing things, the shift also from private to public sector, as well as NGOs around the world. It's really important also to create team synergy. And I know from behavioral standpoint, we can talk about human nature, dynamics, behaviors, but it's also really important to look at a little bit deeper. And I can tell you from looking just what's happening right now, collaborative frameworks, and I'm glad what you just said, that we're seeing the increase, because we're seeing also a lot of loneliness, a lot of isolation, just because people feel like not only if they are working remotely, but they are just not necessarily having that synergetic, effective collaboration that brings so much joy and satisfaction. And then I know that's a lot of question. Why is that? Is it because of what are some of the key factors? Is it about clear communication? Is it about mutual respect? Is it about aligned objectives? And we're seeing some really good opportunity for improvement there, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. And, as we look at what a collaborative, high-performing team looks like, Isabella, we've talked about diversity before. We've talked about CI, but the diversity we're talking about when you talk about high-performing teams in this context goes further than DEI. Because yes, we want everyone represented, but diversity of thought is critical. Diverse teams have different backgrounds, they have different experiences, different insight, different points of view, and different creativity levels. And so this all rolls together. It's not just your stamped DEI mandate. This is more, and it's deeper, and it's more interactive. And the other thing, Isabella, that I learned, and even when I would try one-on-one with this individual, let's just go back to my example of this one person who knew, I'll just call him Igor. It wasn't his name, but he was a foreign spy, and he was from Russia, so whatever. But even then, the team size really makes a difference, because we would collaborate, and then I would bring in another agent or another team member from my squad to help us develop next steps. And it was a very interesting study by McKinsey, and they discovered that teams become less effective when they consist of more than 10 people. And the reason is that sub teams begin to form.
Yes.
Ownership is undermined because there isn't enough time for everybody to share their important input. So it was interesting that they felt like the ideal team was somewhere between 3 and 9 members. So groups, and this is interesting, and as I read this report, I thought back to why it was never just, we didn't operate in a silo. When I had a source or an individual from the public who was willing to help me, I always brought in somebody else because we needed more than just two. And it was interesting. The same McKinsey report found that groups of 2 performed at the same level as solo participants or individuals, suggesting that they were just too small to foster the necessary systems for improved problem thinking. You got into group think. So, I have to honestly say too, no matter the kind of collaborative effort and team building I was trying, it was so essential. And you mentioned it earlier when you talked about trust, Isabella, but to clarify goals and roles. I mean, to really gain the collaboration I needed within all of the people I interviewed, I needed to be very clear about my motives, my expectations, and my goals. And this is where good communication skills are critical, because you just mentioned it. It's the best way to build trust. And people needed to trust me before we could move to the next step. They needed to be inspired by a common goal. And this only happens in a trusting environment.
Mm. I love that. And one thing I want to also add how important it is when you have that foundation and consistency, and
Mm.
the consistency of preserving that trust and then creating and allowing that team dynamics over time. They do create synergy that not only helps with performance, with efficiency, but frankly also achieving tremendous goals. Obviously, when we're aligned in those objectives, when we know where we're headed, why we're doing what we're doing, when we have this really shared vision, magic happens. But when we don't, we see a lot of challenges and issues. And it's really fascinating to me to see, even still to this day, and when we've just in recent year or so, the statistics are still showing the large projects, large programs that are being putting efforts to solve or change something are still failing with absorbing a percent over 80%, not only according to Gartner, but also when we look at some of the data that Gallup shared and Harvard Business Review and many other outlets. And question is, why is that, right? It's like, how is this possible? You have the brilliant minds in your organization. You have all this technology available in your fingertips, and yet 80% projects fail. And what I learned consistently when I'm involved in early stages, when I look at how is a team formed and who is allocated, who is in charge, or how is the teams being monitored or managed, or frankly, often micromanaged, it takes away understanding the strength of your team, strength and capability and of people dynamics, opportunity also to truly understand where we headed, right? And it's like, and if you can't hear the voices in the room, and it's like, are we attaching also wrong people as well as wrong criteria for success, right? It's like, if you don't know how you're going to get to the moon without understanding the path and what it takes to make that happen, and how many people involved and resources and etc., we're going to always miss the mark. We're not going to ever get there, right? So
That's so
I really, go ahead, please.
No, no, and Isabella, as you're talking, I think that we, at least I have, and actually things I've read and people I've talked to feel the same way, is that collaboration tends to be put in just one bucket. Kumbaya, we all work together, and it's obviously a goal. I'm not trying to minimize that, but I think there's different kinds of collaboration. And I think when you're in a workplace, when we're working with people, this is always something to take into account, because I think for more informational, I mean, one type of collaboration is informational, right? Informational resources where we all have knowledge, we all have different skill sets, we have strengths, we have weaknesses, but we all come together because we are diverse in the way I described earlier, not just in terms of male or female, which is an interesting topic I might bring up later. But mostly we're talking about people who can contribute their unique expertise. And the second one is the social type of collaboration, where it involves your awareness, your access, your position in a network, which can be used to help colleagues better collaborate with one another. And the third type is the one that I've spent a bit of time thinking about, because it's the personal collaboration. That means your own time and your own energy. And the thing is, informational and social resources, I mean, just what we're doing, how we're interacting, they're all shared, right? Often in a single exchange. Everybody gets something from it. But when you're talking about an individual employee's time and energy, that's finite. So, I mean, that is where I think a lot of times collaboration can break down, because there are things called people who are called just natural collaborators. I mean, they are the ones that people go to. And again, Harvard Business Review and I love this that they go in depth, and I'm actually on their advisory council, so I'm always reading their stuff. But um, they studied 300 organizations in the United States, and they found that the distribution of collaborative work is lopsided, often extremely lopsided. So in most cases, nearly 1/3 of the value added collaborations came from 2 to 5% of the employees. And you think about that, as
Well,
people become known for being capable, and we all know, if you're the most capable person in the room, you're the one that everybody's going to throw projects at and deadlines, knowing, you'll get it done. As they say, you want something done, give it to a busy person, right? So, but these are people known for being willing to help. They're
yes,
drawn into projects and roles of importance. But and people kind of get a reputation for their desire to help others. And I know a couple of universities have and this isn't new, but the extra miler, I mean, they've kind of dubbed them as the extra miler. That employee that contributes beyond the scope of his or her role. And they are the ones that drive performance more than all the other members combined. So when you think about that, up to 1/3 of value added collaborations come from only 2 to 5% of the employees.
that is so low and shocking and eye-opening and alarming, and frankly has to change. I'm so glad you shared that,
Yeah.
Lorraine, because as we've seen, that is just showing symptomatic issues. And that's why a lot of times, again, things don't get done, customers are not happy, output is not where it needs to be, things cost more or takes longer, quality deteriorates, and questioning is again, what happened? Why is that? But I also just wanted to point it out, and to Liga's point also, how when you were mentioning Harvard Review and as well other organizations, and how this all impact education, and like she's so spot on. And Liga, yes, absolutely, and it's time to really also look at how do we educate children, right, youth and adults, very different perspective, specifically with the learning curve and everything else. But now as adults, how do we continue educating ourselves, right? Which also brings another great point here that Pauline is making, how it's important to have a shared vision and absolutely look at things in the right direction. And as a result, asking question, how do we prioritize human emotions? And this is really interesting question for me, but specifically because, and it's also a thought-provoking because right now we see so much where our emotion is being taxed on, because so many things that happen simultaneously before we show up at work, what's going on in the outside of the work realm. And then on top of when you add complexities, uncertainties, when you get memo that you may not get a bonus this year, or you might be facing layoffs, or you might be asked to stay longer and perform and fill in for people that are not any longer there, or might be taking vacation, or where you maybe need to work during well-earned, deserved time off during holidays and being burned, going through all of those things over and over again. So I'm curious, Lorraine, what's your take on that?
I loved Pauline's question about how to deal with emotions. Particularly when you're in what you were describing, Isabella, when there's so much going on around us, and we won't get into politics, but there's a lot of stuff coming at us these days. And so I just wanted to touch base on something Pauline mentioned, and it has to do with emotions. I have to say, research has shown that in every situation, our brains are instantly wired to assess the other person's intentions. So when it's automatic and
Yes.
it's so quick that we're unaware of the judgments being made. So, facial expressions usually cough up the first clue, but, both verbal and nonverbal offer additional judgments. So the research provides insight into how the brain reads the intentions of other human beings in a social context. Bottom line, the sooner we speak of a shared interest that benefits all parties, the better our chances of success. And the key word is sooner. And since our emotional limbic brain is survival driven, it tries to keep us safe, right? It doesn't care. It doesn't know whether the person in front of us, whether it's a new team member or a new client. I mean, our brain is going to assess that person. So without positive information about that individual, the little limbic brain warns you to keep your distance. And this happens subconsciously. We don't even have time to think about it. It's that book, Think Slow, what was it? Thinking Slow to Think Fast.
Yes.
And
Or
when
slow down to speed up.
exactly. And that's exactly what's happening here. So that's why you must move quickly when you want others to cooperate, because you're going to move that cooperation into collaboration. So to alleviate that natural instinct to react negatively, and this is what I say to people, encourage them, engage in small talk at first. Now, it might seem like a waste of valuable time, and I'm the kind of person who likes to get right to it. I don't like a lot of, silly time wasting banter, but the brain is looking for clues about the person in front of you. And conversation, and I think Pauline mentioned that too. Conversation is the best way to notice, facial expressions, nonverbal, as well as language, tone of voice, you name it. And the other thing is, feel free um, to use icebreakers at workshops. They're very effective when you're organizing people, especially if they don't know each other. And the third thing that um, I always like, and it's hard to do, is um, don't be afraid to engage in a conversation with a difficult person. A person you know right from the beginning is going to be somewhat difficult, and you are going to have to pull back. You're going to have to monitor your own responses, because not everybody you're going to meet is somebody you're going to want to make your best friend. And that's fine. So just try practicing with a difficult person, preferably not somebody in your office, maybe a neighbor, maybe a family member, whatever, but get used to reading yourself so that you know how you react when somebody says something stupid, or at least in your opinion, it's stupid or offensive, because these people show up everywhere. And unless you as a person, me as a person, can kind of rein in our negative response, because that's the thing. If we show negativity, guess what? The other person reads it. If you go, I mean, the other person's going to read it, and so that gets you nowhere. And so a lot of it comes down to being able to control your own emotions, to answer Pauline's questions.
And that is a great point. Right now, more than ever, we need to have a more self-regulation, right? And we're seeing from not only just from the media, but just what's really going on the large scheme of things around the world. And all those implications somehow subconsciously also affect us, even though we consciously are able to process and understand and can put them in specific groups. But ultimately, subconscious and also our own way, how our body mechanism work emotionally, mentally, specifically affect us. And right now, what I wanted to point out, how important it is more than ever to tap into that strength, into that resilience, into that knowledge, into that emotional intelligence that we talk so much about it, into emotional toughness, but also to really recognize when we're triggered something based on fear. Because right now we know that a lot of fear is coming up. It's just a lot of things, like, we had a horrible snowstorm. The whole state was literally put on hold for 24 hours. There was so many accidents and people could not be reached. Snowstorm that came out of nowhere that paralyzed the city, right? So it's like a fear factor. Do I have everything that I need? Do I need to go somewhere? Do I have a medication? People that had really legitimate reasons to be concerned, but then also to think about it, it's like, we're home, we're safe, we have electricity, we have a water, we have a food. And when you assess that, it's amazing how that fear factor and emotion, specifically negative ones, diminish exponentially. On the flip side, when we feed into it, when we talk like choice of words, energy, the tone, and frankly, people that we're surrounded with or that really trigger us more, either is, special news channels or whatever it might be, things that we read, things basically that we consume on daily basis or even hourly basis. Like right now, this is a consumption of conversation that we really want to bring everybody in. And it's just so beautiful to see how everybody's, as a result, leaning more in. And as one also pointed out, that right now, when you talk about art of saying yes, and also there is the art of saying no, to bring back to Rafat question. Rafat, we're not ignoring you, and I'm so glad you're here with us and asked that question that brought up earlier statistics that Lorraine shared, how small percentage is actually collaborating in a true, real sense versus cooperating, and then how we can increase that. So what is your take about the art of telling no on that one?
First of all, to get something you said, Isabella, about fear being our first reaction. And that's something you can beat yourself up over. Sure, go ahead and do that. But it's your brain. It's innate. It's the way your brain is wired. You are always going to go to the negative because our brain is wired to always protect us. Like we were talking earlier, always protect us. That's its first response. So yes, fear is going to be the first thing we experience. So, all you need to do is this, you mentioned it. What you said was spot on. Science has shown us, neuroscience, research out of Stanford University, has shown us that to counter each one negative thought, you need to come up with 5 positive thoughts. Now, that's how strong our negativity bias is. And it's not because we're naturally mean people. No, but that is the way, well, it's the way we kept safe in the saber-toothed tiger days, right? It's how we kept safe. We don't have that threat anymore, but the brain is still evolving and it will still look at negative situations with more intensity and more more effort than it will the positive. So if you can come up with 5 positive things to counter each one negative, that's going to get you started because that's the brain will start to relax. It will start to feel like, okay, it's not a disaster. But although I mean, I'm saying disasters do happen, but I'm just saying in your own individual moment, in whatever is going on, otherwise it's going to be a downward spiral. So just keep that in mind. You know, I think Rafith was talking about the art of saying no. That's that's a wonderful concept. It really is. Some people are just natural collaborators, like we were talking about earlier. And the unfortunate thing about that is not only are they foisted upon, I mean, effort and work is foisted upon them, but they tend to be buried in the company. They may not be the ones that have formal authority. And we like to think of ourselves as leaders, as people who are leading the charge. But the point is, a lot of these people are not the ones we notice. We find that what starts to be a virtuous cycle turns into a vicious circle, right? And soon helpful employees become institutional bottlenecks. Work doesn't progress until they've weighed in. Worse, they're so overtaxed that that's where the bottleneck comes in, right? And more often than not, the volume and diversity of work they do to benefit others goes unnoticed because requests are coming from everywhere, from other offices, other units, whatever. So and the same survey I was talking about by Harvard Business Review used a network analysis to identify the strongest collaborators in organizations. Leaders are typically surprised by at least half of the names on that list because they're not the ones that are visible. They're not the ones, drawing attention to themselves. And they saw, and I find this incredibly interesting. And that same study saw an overlap of about only 50% between the top collaborative contributors in an organization and those employees deemed to be the top performers. So many collaborators underperform because they're overwhelmed. And that's why managers they need to take, and leaders need to take this more seriously, and find ways to redistribute the work and identify who really are the natural collaborators in your group. Uh, and they will probably not be, as I was mentioned, they probably won't be the top performers. Only 50% of the time are they found to be the top performers, but they are the top collaborators.
I love
Interesting.
the connection between collaboration and our lack of it, but also you spot on in terms of can we and when we can say no, and how do we say it, even though we may not be in the position. It's also about intentions, as you mentioned earlier. More than ever, we need to stress out how important it is how we show up energetically, with the force or not, with the words, with the body language. As Laura pointed out, as behavioralists, we see this all the time, that will immediately either repel people or help them to lean in and feel like they can trust, and then also they can voice other maybe issues and concerns. And wouldn't you want to know something is going wrong sooner than later, that it's not going to be as costly and detrimental? Of course, but that again depends of the leaders, right? And what do you allow in your own environment? And
Yes.
as a result, that requires different skills. We're talking about obviously essential skills in the past related to that. So it's also about communication. Either how you communicate something that it's negative, perceived, that is challenging or difficult, something that's maybe hard to hear. Again, intent is a huge component of that, how well that will be received. So we can't undermine how much obviously the communication skills, active listening play a huge role. But what I'm finding that right now more than ever is true, genuine empathy. We had the situation scenarios when we see all that false positivity too. And it's very important we can detect that, right? And more closer attention, everybody actually can tune that and develop that skill set. So that really can help you to know that you also not being falsely put in scenario where you know that later on you're going to be reprimanded, or it's going to be detrimental to either your position, your longevity with the company, and frankly with your team in terms of team dynamics. And also shows quality of how do we solve conflicts, how do we resolve them, as a lack of collaboration, or as a lack of not shared vision. And these dynamics that not only have to do with personality per se and skill set, but truly environment, right? It's like if you're getting always urgent missed deadlines, or if you're constantly operating in crisis, if somebody's constantly seeing nitpicking of one small tiny thing that's missing, overshadowing all the great work that's been done, that really kills and affects not only morale, performance, but truthfully the synergy, the team dynamics, and frankly, as results, as we know, fortunately, the level of collaboration. But one thing I want to also stress out here, and want to hear your perspective, Lorraine, how important is to leverage, you touched on a little bit, diversity, because with stronger collaboration and diversity, it's a strong correlation there, not only with the data, but also opportunities where we can have more inclusive types of practices, where we're also keeping check not only the biases, but issues that we're dealing with on a daily basis. Sometimes that would like, what I'm projecting from my perspective or my past experience, or things that happened in the past versus what's really going on at this moment. So it's really important also, I would say, to look at it, something that we often forgot. It's that power of how do we check in? How do we check in with each other?
I'm going to go back to something you started this whole thing with, and that was communication, because I think that answers the question you're asking. But you talked about communication a little bit earlier when you were starting this particular conversation, and I think people don't necessarily want more communication, but more effective communication. And I know Salesforce, when I worked with them a little bit, 75% of their workers, so they prefer to speak with colleagues as they would friends, revealing basically what we're talking about is more authentic, honest communication. So, in the old days, workplace communications like posters and town hall meetings, they just don't align anymore with the heavily digitalized communication that takes place outside of the office. So you're talking about checking in. I think it started with the topic of conversation. And I mean, old school communication styles aren't necessarily bad. It's just that they're out of sync with how we get information in almost every other part of our life, right?
Yes.
I think it's also important to point to the changing composition of the workforce. Baby boomers are reaching retirement age, while Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, particularly Gen Z, are entering the workforce. So, and these younger generations have been connected to technology for most of their lives, and they have very different expectations from communication, right? Millennials may expect more digitalized messages, while baby boomers are still liking this one-to-one thing that we still like and still important, but it's I think it's important to tailor the type of communication to the person. And so, I mean, if you're talking to a younger generation, that's maybe different than a baby boomer. But it's interesting. Um, I read something somewhere, and I don't know where it came from, but there was a survey that interviewed 1,000 workers. 17% of those 1,000 workers would recommend firing their CEO based on how that person communicated to their employees.
Wow.
So, I mean, I found that fascinating. I don't have the stat on that or where that came from, but I'm not surprised because we get in this rut. You know, it's worked for us before, we'll work again. And we just kind of forget that people are all different, generations are different. And we need everybody to collaborate and can find ways to communicate, regardless of the age differential. So, um, you know, I'm just a big proponent of being very careful and intentional about the way you reach out to people, particularly
Mm.
who are of a different age group or a different background or whatever. Everybody's different, and that's where, being authentic. I went back to that Salesforce um, survey, to be authentic. And nobody wants to call the boss Mr. or Miss or Mrs. or Ms. You know what I mean? They don't want to do that. It's like, hey, Carla, how you doing? I mean, or whatever the name is. I know that's a little bit more relaxed of an environment, but that's how they feel like they're part of the team. And it's not this layered where you're on the bottom rung, that kind of thing.
Sure, the authority hierarchy and all of those stuff create a lot of stuffness, and as a result, division. More and more, also people to be more reluctant to engage. And I love that we also have Imran's comment here, and we're so happy to have you, Imran, to join us as well, because it is very important topic and diverse perspectives from different backgrounds and knowledge. It's always welcome because we all learn from each other. It is also a dialogue. It's a conversation that needs to happen. It doesn't happen as often. And something that you were mentioning earlier, how important it is, that sense of feeling that are we belonging here? Are we feeling valued? But what's really interesting is how much data. I love what you touched on, also digital footprint that we're seeing. Just even thinking about few platforms like Glassdoor, for example, for instance,
Mhm.
I can be there and I can, as behaviorals, find 100 different points of reference for one specific company. Not only how is a CEO being rated, and how they are looking the ranking of the CEO approval or lack of it, but also based on current and past employees, what they're saying. And I never seen as much current employees being as vocal as they are, which also shows that they're not there anymore playing small game. And it's, are we adjusting that? So if I'm open to say, this is how I feel, what is going on right now, they're giving you outlets and different avenues to pay attention. And a lot of times, if you're not paying attention what's going on internally within an organization, what's going on with your team, with your department, if you're not also giving people open, transparent, clear sense of what is happening, what changes are coming, and how you are planning to address them, or how do you going to navigate, what type of support is available, all of those things are going to just create a more and more anxiety. And as a result, We might cooperate, we might show up at the right time, we might be looking and checking all the boxes, but we definitely will not be collaborating. We're definitely not going to be making all the results that are needed. And frankly, we're not going to see organization moving forward for what they're hoping or aiming at. And nobody wants to be in that environment. So we have some great tips here, what to do on the flip side, right, Lorraine? Because we love to not only think about from the positive perspective, but it is something that each one of us have a chance. Just like, how is this really looking in real life? And some of the stuff I can tell you based on some of recent experiences, it's really important to look at what role do we play, and how we deal with conflicts, how do we deal with difficult conversations and frankly difficult people, and then where do we can improve and do better, being just like that very, very clear honesty, right? It's like, okay, now I know, and let me test it out. And the best part, anytime we try to test something differently, that we are elevating our own leadership, our own performance, you can get very quick feedback, and you can really see what's working, what is not working. So what are some of the keys areas that you found to be successful as FBI agent in very hard, difficult, challenging situations, and knowing when these nuances work, and what are some of those that you can highlight for others to apply as well?
Well, I have to say, I don't think I've ever run into a situation where I flashed my badge and people are going, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I can hardly." I never had that happen. I'm just going to say it. But I'm one of the tricks, I guess, that I learned, and this is based in science. It's not that I thought it up. Is it's called mirroring, and it really deep research by neuroscientists have discovered that the mirror neurons, and I mean mirror to mirror what we see, those mirror neurons in our brain light up when we see another person reflect an emotion we are expressing. So, for example, when we see someone smile, our mirror neurons light up and we smile back. That's just natural. Our brain takes care of that for us. We really don't need to think about that. Um, our brain likes to share the emotion of the person in front of us, which is why it's important to be positive. If you get somebody who's all grumpy and you don't want to, first of all, you don't want to even spend time with them because they're not attractive people to be around, right? But it's so important. That's why facial expressions are important. When we want to get to know others and we want to get them to cooperate or collaborate with them, with us. I mean, when we see someone experience an emotion, it activates the same circuits in our brain. So if you want a positive response, show that positivity to the other person. Their mirror neurons, theirs, not yours, theirs will register your emotion, your positive emotion, and their automatic limbic brain response will echo your attitude. So, I mean, remember the flight emotional response is always the easiest to arouse.
Yeah.
So we don't like it, whatever, we just get out of Dodge, right? So be careful in what you say and how you say it if you want to get the other person to cooperate with you. So again, I encourage people to practice in front of a mirror or video yourself when you're in conversation. What is your natural? A lot of people, when they are not speaking, their mouth settles into a natural frown. Take note if that is you. Some people show teeth when they smile, but others remain close-lipped. So just notice. It's not that that is bad, but just notice how, take note of your facial expressions in various conversations to better understand how you come across to others. And the second thing I always did as much as I could was share personal stories, because stories activate those same mirror neurons and they deepen our connection with people. These increase the likelihood for collaboration. But people with good social connections also do better at planning, thinking, and regulating their own emotions. Gets back to the question I think Pauline was getting to. What do you do with those emotions that keep popping up, especially the unpleasant ones? So when we tell stories that help shape our thinking and our way of life, we have that same effect on others too. Uh, the brain of the person telling the story and those listening actually synchronize. Not only are the same language processing parts of the brain activated, but the same emotional parts of the brain are activated as well. So we can plant ideas and thoughts and emotions in the brain of the listener. So I would just always encourage people to think back, go prepared. You don't have to think about this on the spot. Be prepared. Think back to an incident that impacted you. Turn it into a story where you can share what you felt and how it positively influenced your thinking. It doesn't need to be long, but it does need to come from the heart. And those are the two
Mm.
effective ways I found for breaking through the resistance I almost always found when I knocked on someone's door or went to interview them or whatever. So it, those are just a couple of tips I would have.
I love it. And I love when you said be heart centered, when we are coming for best intention and seeking the best outcome, not just for you, what's in there for me, right? Or for you as an agent to get and extract what you want and just move on. But when it's really like how you position, how you insert yourself, how do you talk, how do you interact, what kind of dynamics do you create in or lack of it, that all really speaks very clearly what your intentions are. And that's why I find when we know someone's intentions, it's so much easier to engage. It's so much easier to trust them. It's so much easier to have a great ideas and creativity to going. And from those creativities, not only enhance collaboration, but of course enhance performance. And as a result, really show what's possible. What can we jointly create together? I believe strongly the world is better together. And instead of doing things alone, I could do this show by myself, but that would not be a remotely fun as just doing with my partner, co-host here with Lorraine. That will also still not be the same if we were just doing pre-recording and not having phenomenal interaction with every single one of you. And that's the beauty that right now, what we're just wanted to prove, it's how this collaborative efforts can happen, regardless where it might be geographically. Even we never talked before. Look at people join us from different parts of the world today. This morning, they chose this Saturday to spend and show up because not only they have curiosity, they had an interest and desire to learn, but also share their knowledge and expertise so all of us can be better. And that's really what's all about collaboration, that organic, beautiful synergy when we find ourselves landing on something that that resonates, right? Either it's a topic or scenario, but also the way you are invited, the way you are included. How many times I'm being scenarios when I could tell that you have these little cliques, like you were talking about, these sub different groups and teams, not just based on the side, but also how people want to alienate one another for whatever reason. And that is not obviously what we're talking about here. The art collaboration is when we also master that synergy. First, it starts with us, but also that we really show what it takes to continue cultivating that synergy, because everybody wants that end result, right? Everybody wants that success, whatever success criteria might be, whatever the boss is going to evaluate project or program on, or whatever is going to happen from the team output, or whatever client's going to say on the end of the day. But the bottom line is we can create that. And how do you create that to be unstoppable? It's a recipe back again to how do we start with ourselves, and how do we start with us as a team member? And back to Lorraine's comment, how heart-centered leadership and compassion, it's crucial, because when intent is clear, there is no confusion, either positive or negative. So based on how we show up and what our intent is going to reflect very quickly, effectively back.
Somebody made a point about being genuine in the comments, and I forget who that was. I apologize. But
Okay.
oh, yes, thank you. That should be genuine. Thank you for putting that up. It has to be genuine. And that's how you build trust. Because if you don't have trust, you can't really, you really can't be collaborative. I found something very interesting. Men and women take different approaches to collaborative work. And it is interesting that about 1/3 of men are likely to offer support by sharing knowledge and expertise, while
Mm,
women are about 2/3 more likely to assist others. So
mm,
it's not, so it's sort of logical that the lion's share of collaborative work tends to fall on women. They're stereotyped. We are stereotyped as communal and caring. So we're expected to help others with heavy workloads, do the mentoring and the training to more junior colleagues, and attend meetings. And meetings can be just the death strangle of work, right? Truthful. But at any rate, women experience greater, as a result of all that, women experience greater emotional exhaustion than men. And excuse me, sorry about this, but people view contributions differently as well. People rated a man who worked overtime to support colleagues at over 15% higher than a woman who did the same thing. And the woman was 10 times more likely to be penalized than the man when
mm.
neither helped. So, I mean, there are these biases that are out there, these stereotypes, and we, unfortunately, they're still alive and well. So, people who are listening, who are leaders and who are managers, need to ensure that men and women get equal credit for collaboration. And some of these are unconscious biases. I mean, I'm not saying that people go out there intentionally trying to overload women, but it's just creating an awareness. Everybody needs to feel supported, and um, and I saw a question down there, and I wanted to answer it. Now I don't know which one it was.
It is. It's back
Okay,
to it. Yes.
how do you see the connection embodies the true essence of collaboration needed in today's AI-driven landscape? Some things are never going to change. We are going to need to communicate. And AI, I love AI. I use it all the time to check what I'm writing, to do deeper research. There's some amazing ways to get, and easy, because it's just there and it will give you the citation. So you're not just, it's better than a Google search, to be honest, I think. I mean, just your traditional Google search. But I, I think connection is always going to be important because that's how we're wired. We need to connect with other humans. Robots are not going to serve the same purpose. And I know you're not talking probably about people in the house or robots in the house, but I think when we talk about sharing information, we talk about sharing who we are as people, as individuals. This is something AI will never be able to replace. So I just really believe that the human connection is always going to trump whatever AI system there is out there. So I see that the AI can actually help our connections, and it can help us come together with research, with information, with ways of thinking that maybe the team members don't have. You've got a team of, let's just say, 7. They have their experience, which is important, and it needs to be diverse because backgrounds and experiences, these are things we don't talk about when we talk about DEI, but this is what we're talking about. We talk about collaboration. This is what we need. So, but when you bring in AI into it, there's like, oh, wow, I never thought about that. And then you bring that to the team. So I see that it's nothing but a win-win, to be truthful.
Mm. Yes, if it's used as a tool, Imran, I totally agree. It's going to help to enhance, to get us to be more efficient. But that ultimately human connection, either it's written, either it's verbal, or however we do, it's going to never going to diminish the need, obviously, for us to communicate with each other. Which is interesting also seeing that a lot of comments that I'm seeing, not just, on LinkedIn, for example, on different posts, but also things that have been written where you can tell that AI wrote it because they are intellectually sound good, But what I've always looked for it, do they reflect someone's truly heart and soul? Are they coming from that embodiment of internal process and passion and desire to really convey something on much more deeper level? And that is what I found is so important when that right now we're craving more connection, more real connection than ever before, right? More real sense of belonging than ever before, more real friendships, more free partnerships, more real collegial types of relationships. And having that, it's only a way where we truly use our voice. So even though maybe use the tool to help with research, reference, maybe better choice of words, or simplifying something that we're trying contextually to convey, ultimately, we should never override our own intelligence and override our own voice. And that is the danger. And we can actually see very quickly if that is the case. And that also comes in conversation. I run into a few people, they look very polished out there, and just everything is right and everything is so perfect. And perfection that is so sterile, not inviting, not real, and frankly doesn't get any sense of, it's like, do I really want to work with someone like that? On the flip side, when you talk to them, they could not exude the level of that perfection that they were having in writing or other ways that were trying to convey or personify themselves. So it's very also important that continue to have a leadership authentic voice, to continue to be absolutely as genuine as real, to continue to be vulnerable. And I love, Imran, your questions and again interaction here and coming forward with that, because it's so important also to show up. It doesn't matter, I'm first time here we go. I also am gonna find the ways how to navigate. But if we are not putting ourselves out there, if we're not reflecting what we stand, what we believe in, if we're not consistently being curious, which I love to Liga's and Pauline's point, and specifically Liga, since you are doing a lot of educating programs across Canada and the world with the different models and finding better ways to also infuse different learning and creativity with younger, obviously with children, with younger generation. It's so beautiful to see what that ripple effects create as a result. And to Pauline's perspective also, yes, belonging is most important and essential. And then also to Imran's perspective, that is very important to not replace that true human touch, humanity itself, which that beating heart, passion, desire to connect, collaborate, and as a result, create tremendous success. Any comments from your perspective in closing, and any last comments from you guys, please, that you've been here with us throughout this session?
So the thing that has always gotten me the furthest in my work was being authentic. And that can be really hard. And it's hard work because a lot of us have this veneer of who we think we are or who we think we should be. It gets
Yeah.
back to the perfectionism you're talking about. But it's all shallow. It's so shallow. And I've gotten myself out of some very sticky situations by just being authentic and not trying to BS anybody, not trying to be, rough and tough. This is who I am. This is what I'm doing. This is, and the most important message you can convey as a manager or a leader is who you are as a person. But first of all, you have to know who you are as a
Yes.
person. And that takes self-awareness. And I'm sorry, folks, that just takes time and it takes effort, but it's worth it. And it will pay you back. It is the secret ingredient, really, self-awareness. When you get to anything, you talk about mental toughness. You want to be mentally tough, you have to know yourself first. So you're not surprised by your response when something comes at you from out of the blue, or when you're in a situation that's contentious. You need to know yourself well enough to know how you're going to respond so you can moderate that. You can moderate and decide how to respond rather than simply react. So that would be my best advice for how to be the kind of person that really can create a collaborative environment.
That's beautiful. And again, I wanted to just take a moment to thank everyone for tremendous
Thank you.
collaboration, for tremendous participation, great comments from Pauline to Liga to Imran and everybody else that joined us that commented earlier. I really appreciate it. Also, love seeing that few other people join us, like Waskwa. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. And I think we missed your question. I want to make sure that we answer your question also before we wrap up. That it's really important also in terms of teams where it's lack of respect and ignoring what should you do. That is very heart-wrenching, no matter how old we are, how well emotional we are equipped. When we see intentional misbehaving and also team dynamics that ostracize someone for whatever reasons that might be, or like we see the popular high school movies here produced in the United States, Mean Girls or mean behavior, or subtle a type of behavior that is not as visibly mean or disrespectful. And I have to say that is being very dominant in current times. And it's very degrading and challenging and difficult for so many individuals, specifically if you have so much going on in your personal life. If you're also trying so hard to show up, if you are also personally affected with your well-being, with your mental health, whatever might be the case, because that's affects and that's create that negative reverse effect. It's really important to think about from multiple different perspectives. And I want to make sure that everybody watching, listening, also find how to protect yourself, right? And which is understanding, is this coming from one person, or how is it this becoming all of a sudden group dynamic? To also think about it of some steps and things that happened prior, also to position and to really understand and ask very simple question. Are you okay? Isabella, are you okay today? Is this something that I can assist you with? Is there something going on that I'm not aware of? Asking open-ended, genuine, kind question. If we react and if we bring all the emotion and chaos into, and to Lorraine's point earlier, how important it is to have self-discovery, knowing who you are, knowing that also what's being projected to you doesn't have nothing to do with you. So then turning to those individuals in sense of ownership to ask them, to own them as like, is this something that I missed? Is something that I'm not read or need to be cued in? And sometimes depending on what relationship it's there, and leave open door to dialogue. And if dialogue is not happening, then it's a different steps, but making sure obviously that things don't accelerate in a direction that nobody wants, right? But I wanted to also point it out, if it's a lack of respect and it's ignorance, and if it's across the board situation, that is reflection also toxic culture. What we allow a type of behavior in front of leaders, within the leaders dynamics, then means then we tolerate that. And question is how bad it is, and is this something you're willing to continue to tolerate? I would love to hear your thoughts.
You know, I love that question, because I've been in a situation where it's not a toxic culture, and yet some team members are minimized, or there's you know, I wouldn't say lack of respect, but they're not given a full voice. And at that point, I would suggest that person drill down and really own their strengths, so that when they do make an observation, or they do come forward, it's solid. Because so many times I've seen this happen. People get them together in a team. It's a small team, but that person, when they make a contribution, it's not really a significant contribution. And when you're dealing with people at sort of a higher level, you've got to have the thought in place, and have the work behind you. So if you are confident in your sphere of expertise, that is what you need to bring forward. Maybe your area of expertise is not a part of what the collaborative team is trying to do. That's fine. You need to focus on what your contribution to the collaborative team is, and make sure it's good. Make sure that you can shine in that area. It's almost impossible to ignore competence. And so even if it's not respected, take a look at yourself and decide how you can move into a situation where you can make a real significant contribution. And that I always found to be the best revenge. I have been minimized many times. I have been ignored many times. I mean, many times. I was the only female on the squad for many years. So it's like, okay, that's fine. Let me kill you with competence. And so maybe my little area was here. I could get people to cooperate and collaborate with me because I don't come across all hard and, I'm in your face about things, which is something some of these guys couldn't do. So I used that. And so I didn't really care if I was marginalized. I was, but I didn't really care because I knew what my area of competency was. And that was a crack. That was a crack that got me into the bigger collaborative, because we did divide into sub-teams, and there were the losers and the winners, those who were marginalized and those who always had the best cases and always had the best things happen to them. So it just depends on how serious you want to break into that group, because you can do it and you can have competence.
Wonderful. And I hope, Vakas, you got answer to your question. But I just want to say again, thank you so much. It's an excellent one, and we see it all the time. And the question is now also, what we see slowly improving over time, right? Paying attention and really see what's working very well, because each team, each personality, each dynamic will be different. And a lot of times who is leading, I remembered on project, and when project was led with women that was going through a lot of challenges herself, she couldn't separate criticism or feedback. She saw the feedback as a criticism to the point that really affected her, not only how she led the project, but also dynamic of the team. And I remember that we were burning exponential amount of hours, unnecessary, because she was trying so hard to show her expertise and prove herself over and over, when we dealt with much seasoned, mature individuals, and things were just overkill, unnecessary. And a lot of times also we can see also where maybe somebody's coming from and how can we put someone to ease. And I recognized what was going on. So I was exactly trying to do, I was like, can we take a lunch break? What type of food would you like? Let's take a, opportunity to step away from project. Let's have a little jokes. Let's have a little whatever. And then let's come back. Let's revisit. Let's pause. And when sometimes we give someone break when we see them struggle and jump in to not necessarily rescue them, because obviously it can be insulting or however it's that done, but to also show them that is a different way, that at that moment they cannot really compute or figure it out. That also shows amazing strength in your leadership and opportunity to flip the script and completely change the outcome. And we do that all the time, don't we, Lorraine? And I also wanted to this great question from Lorna. Lorna, thank you so much for asking that, because we were talking earlier about these intentions, right? What are our intentions? If it's our best intentions in play right now, obviously, then it's different voice, energy. And as a result, I love, again, seeing all these great questions and participation, because ultimately, how is this serving us, right? How does make us feel after something either that's good happened? Now that all of us can go and say, no matter where we're geographically right now, seeing people join us from US, obviously, Canada, Middle East, also Latin America. We had some gentlemen that joined us from El Salvador. It's just beautiful to show that all of these elements are absolutely very timely relevant no matter where we're at. It's just question is what scenario, years of experience, and team dynamics, as I call it, team DNA looks like, right? But regardless of that, the question is how these signs specifically help you and collective on overall mission with integrity and values. And I have to say, the fact that statistically, sadly, we have the lowest confidence and trust in leadership on planet Earth right now, not just in US, but across everywhere, values got shifted. And obviously integrity got shifted. Just because others' values and integrity got shifted, that doesn't mean you have to. And that's the beauty, that we still can lead with our own integrity, with our own values. And I just want to kudos for everybody who showed up, made yourself visible, and then doing something that most people would not do, which is watch on the sidelines, be passive, criticize, judge, But the beauty is, again, when we have uphold our own standards, our own values shows. And I just want to say for every single one of you, thank you for your values reflecting in and desire to lead better, to continue to grow, and then also at the same time showing what matters to you, what's important to you. Lorraine, what is your take on that?
I totally agree. And I also think that some of the questions, I feel that people are just being too hard on themselves. Because you're not perfect, they don't have the same energy level, maybe, and whatever. And it speaks to the statement I made earlier about teams being less than 10, because you can't get known in a bigger group. And to respect you and your contribution, people have to get to know you. So smaller teams of 3 or 4 often work better for people who are not sure if they're not perfect, because nobody is. But if you're in a smaller team, they get to know you. They can vouch for you because you are a person of value in your area. And the thing I really think that is so important, get to know yourself, to know where your value is. And how you can make a contribution to the company or organization. If you're in a startup, what is your role and how can you make a contribution? You may not be able to do the 360, but that's why we call it collaboration, because there's somebody else over here who knows maybe more about finance or whatever the topic happens to be. If that's not your thing, respectfully bow out. Let somebody with more experience and knowledge step in. So it's a lot of it is just putting ego to the side. But then giving yourself value and understanding you can make a contribution and you don't have to do everything. You don't have to be perfect, but your contribution is unique. It's you, and it's up to you to find out and develop that contribution.
Love that. So thank you so much. It is wonderful to have everybody here. Thank you so much for great comments, participation. We're super excited to have all of you. It's so great to finish on positive note with all the not only great participation, comments, interaction, great questions, but also with the great leaders that joined us around the world, that desire to raise the bar, to continue to lead with Leadership Edge, which also stands for not only for great excellence, but leadership excellence. That's so important. And we're seeing, but also obviously tuning in and continue to learn. The learning, it's huge aspects of that, right? And then how do we show up every day? But one thing I just want to say in closing, what Lorraine mentioned, I can't stress enough, nothing will change as long as we don't change ourselves. Meaning, if we continue to operate from that same place and we don't grow, if we don't work on ourselves to show up to be the healthiest we can be, not only physically, but mentally, emotionally, that we also show up as a better human being, so that we can navigate and overcome challenges from the past, so that we're not victim, we're not easily triggered, or not also easily angered, then it's going to change completely trajectory around. On the flip side, I love what also Lorraine said, how much we sometimes look at through the lens and more self-critical and feel that we're not enough. And I want to point out how important it is to know you know more than you are giving yourself credit. You're more equipped and capable than you are hearing from others. And it's sad that we still have over 75% companies not talking and elevating and showing when something is done very well, complimenting, voicing that out in a moment. And if they do, it's very passive and not as visible, as loud as criticism and judgment is. So I just want to point it out for today. Thank you for all of you. And we wanted just to say how amazing you are and how wonderful this session was as a result of your contributions as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Until next time. See you next Saturday.